boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Reading backwards. Hello everybody, Bob Lust, the Pond Boss, checking in with you on this Wednesday evening. Looks like I'm going to be broadcasting backwards. Oh well, that's the way it goes. Hey, welcome to this Wednesday evening. Hope you guys are having a big time. I see Wayne, and I bet Josie's hanging out, Daniel Hall, Zach, Wyatt, and we got other folks watching tonight. So I'm thrilled to death you guys are here to join me. I'm hanging out at Lusk Lodge Comatoo across the pond in our little cabin that we built a few years ago. So there's a little backstory there. Our bookkeeper, Robin, her husband, tested positive for the coronavirus. So I decided I think I'll stay away from the office. And my bride, Debbie, was in contact with a person that 2 days later showed symptoms and then tested positive. So we're kind of quarantining away from each other a little bit. Debbie's across the pond hanging out at LL Comatoo. I hope she's watching the show. And I'm hanging out in our little cabin, which is pretty dadgum cozy. I've got a lot done today. Been working on the next issue of Pond Boss Magazine, the January, February issue. We have got some really good articles coming up in that issue. So you guys need to check it out. Hey, Justin Shank, I see you. We're going to have an article in the next issue of Pond Boss written by a Pond Boss subscriber that lives in Davis, California, which is a pretty cool article. I read it today and got to edit it, go through it a little bit. Zach Bollinger, Travis Paul Smith, Tony Sutton, John Funk. I'm sure Jason Nepstad's around here somewhere, although I think he had a dinner date with his daughter. Maybe that was last week. Tony Sutton. Hey, you guys know the drill. You got it going on there. I see it. Frank James says the screen is frozen. Mine's not. I don't know what's going on. I'm looking at it as well. I got a pretty good internet connection here in the cabin. It's pretty quick. I checked it a while ago, and it's 25 megabytes, so it ought to be pretty good. Let's see. Josie says her screen's locked up too. Frank's is locked up. Danny Mac says he's got it locked up too. I don't know. I'm looking at my laptop and it is scrolling good. It's going good. I don't see anything going on my end. So I'm just going to go with it and see what happens. Plus, you know what? I've also got AT&T on this, so I should be able to broadcast. Well, you know what? I thought about talking tonight about a topic that I've not covered before. I thought about talking about the fish we never talk about. You know, we talk about largemouth bass. We talk about bluegill all the time. We talk about channel catfish some. We talk about forage fish, bluegills, threadfin shad. We even talked about gizzard shad. We've talked about bullheads some. So I thought I would cover some of the fish that we don't talk about very much. We'll see if I can get that glare off my head there. We'll see. Maybe so, maybe no. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comments section. Click like. Share this video to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for a Pond Boss mug. It's showing backwards. I forgot to turn my screen around. Oops. And a Pond Boss hat. That's reading backwards. You know what? We had a winner. We had a drawing this week, and Paul Tuzzolino from the Catskills in upstate New York, you're the winner. So you'll, and what's really cool, it's kind of ironic because Paul has this issue of the magazine, this cover right here, that's his photograph right there. That's on his pond in upstate New York. And so I gave him a little ring-a-ding-ding and said, hey, you know what? Why don't you write a story? You know, you're a really good photographer. I got a feeling you could tell a story. So he agreed to do that. So he's going to, well, actually, he's already done it. He sent me a story about their sanctuary, which is their pond. You know, he lived in the city and then could not wait for Fridays to get there so he and his wife and the kids could drive up, stay in a camper at their retreat in the Catskills, and then later on they added a pond. And you know what? You're going to get to read about that story and some of the fun things that they've done to be able to enjoy that pond. So, Paul, you have won a Pond Boss hat and a Pond Boss mug that knows how to keep hot things hot, cold things cold. Where's Jacob when I need him? He needs to be chiming in here. John Funk, Mid-Michigan, had our first ice this morning. Yeah, that's about right for you guys, I think, except you guys have really had some, really warm weather lately. Let's see here, Danny Mac. Are you guys, so Zach Bollinger's got So he's not working either. So his bride tested positive. We got it all around us now. You know, we're being as careful as we have been in the past, but it still seems to be getting closer and closer. So we're avoiding it the best we can. Debbie's not shown any symptoms, and she did test negative, but out of an abundance of precaution, we've chosen to quarantine. And so we're going to quarantine together in separate places. And anyway, that's what's going on here. So let's talk about some fish. Kyle Edwards, I see you. Todd Austin. Josie's in the penthouse, and Wayne is at the house. So y'all are quarantining together in separate places. That's pretty cool. Let's see. You know what, Justin? When you read this story, oh, there's Liz checking in from Indiana. Good to see, or Illinois. Good to see Liz. Mike McPherson. Justin, that's awesome. I wish I could connect with more California people. You know what? After you read this article, why don't you drop me an email and I'll connect you guys and you can talk about it. Clark Cole's checking in. David Schneiderman, one of our sponsors with Easy Dock of Texas, he's checking in. Clark Cole. Clark worked with me a long, long time ago, like in the 80s, like I'm going to say probably 86, 87, 88 through there. When he was right out of high school, I think in college, was working with me back then, way a long time ago. And now he's got more gray hair than I do. Look at that, Clark. Matter of fact, I think I've got more hair than Clark does. Good to see Wyatt. The internet's working good. Mike Cottrell, I got to see Dave Davison yesterday. Dropped off a deer head for €1. We didn't talk too bad about it. Okay. I saw. Hey, Mike, I saw that. I saw a post on Facebook today where it looks like Dave and one of his young running buddies did pretty dead good. Zach says he's got a good internet. Travis, I missed you last week. I was pumping out my spa pond, getting ready for those F1s. Attaboy. Anthony Abate, good to see Anthony from Illinois. Mark Dyer, Dick Tabbert. John Funk wants to talk about yellow perch. You know what? We'll do that. Let's talk about yellow perch. Travis Smith got it. Hot things hot, cold things cold, but it doesn't know how to do it, but it does. That's right. Bullheads, green sunfish, local minnows, the other fish in his area. That's good. Josie's got COVID. Josie, honey, I hate that. I hope your symptoms are mild and your recovery is fast. So hang in there, kiddo. Hybrid stripers. We got a pretty nice hybrid striped bass article coming out in the January, February issue, but I am going to talk about those here in a minute. Rock bass. John Funk, what does that mean? I tell you what it means for our Thanksgiving, John. What it means is when Debbie contacted the person that tested positive, she contacted him on Tuesday of last week. And it was an outside venue at a Sonic, and it was actually our son. So she sat down with him and the kids and the wife, and they all had a hamburger outside for about 20 or 30 minutes. And then she headed home. 2 days later, he had symptoms, which was Thursday of last week. And then he tested on Friday, got his results on Saturday, called his mother on Sunday. And then we started getting on the phone, calling our doctors and people we trust in. And they told Debbie to quarantine for 2 weeks from that Tuesday when she contacted. So her quarantine will be up a week from yesterday unless she comes down with the virus. Now, she was tested with one of those quick tests that has an 80% accuracy rate, and she tested negative. So she's going to go back tomorrow and get tested again to be sure, but she's not had any symptoms, except she did have just a little bit of a kind of an allergy cough, and we don't think that was a symptom of this because that sense is abated. It's gone. So she's going to get tested again tomorrow, and if she doesn't have it, we're going to defy the government, which I am sick and tired of the government telling me what to do. If I want to go out and be exposed to the virus, I'm going to go be exposed to the virus. If I want to go to a football game and sit with the crowd, I'm going to go to a football game. If I catch it and I die, I chose that. So answer that. We've been invited to go spend time with one of our sons to have Thanksgiving. We have an RV down there, so we'll be staying in the RV and we'll have lunch. Got a son coming in from Arizona and got several kids coming down to meet us down at Running River Ranch, and that's what we're going to do for Thanksgiving, unless she tests positive. If she tests positive, we'll be eating bologna by ourselves. I see Greg Grimes. Good to see Greg. Doug Brown, hybrid striped bass are doing good. Billy Birch checking in. Let's see. Dick Tabbert, smallies are growing fast. Liz, Gary, okay. Larry, Gary is on Liz's page. That's right, I forgot. Gary doesn't have Facebook. Chuck said, if I had to do my pond all over, I'd love to try smallmouth. I tell you what, your pond's working so good, you don't need to start over. Zach said, just out of curiosity, but have you ever worked with big lake sturgeon or just wondering? You know, I don't have any sturgeon stories at all. I have none. Dick Tabbert, love the videos. Mark Dyer, white crappie versus black crappie. Is there any other ones to, any cons to one over the other? Yeah, I'll talk about that. It was a glorious day, Pond Boss fam. My first successful aluminum sulfate treatment yesterday, and it worked like a charm. Feeding my bluegills even better when you can see them coming. Excellent. That's good stuff, Clayton Bounds. Okay, let me see here. I'm going to scroll back here and pick up these questions and get on them here. What was the first one? I think it was yellow perch. Yellow perch. Yellow perch. Actually, I've found yellow perch. You know, the yellow perch seem to thrive best in cool water. You know, so they like the Midwest, they like northern waters, but they live over at Richmond Mill Lake in North Carolina, and that lake gets hot. Now, they don't get very big. I think 7 or 8 inches is about the biggest one I've ever seen over there. I've even come across them here south of me at Lake Kiowa, which is a 600-acre lake in Texas. And the people that stocked that lake the very first time, they put northern pike, smallmouth, walleye, and yellow perch in this 570-acre shallow-bodied water in Texas. Well, they did that in 1977 or 78. I first analyzed that fishery in 1985, and I found yellow perch. Now, they were a remnant population dominated by largemouth bass, bluegill, and other fish like common carp, gizzard shad, green sunfish, a few red ear sunfish, but those other cold water fish did not make it. But the yellow perch seemed to make it. Now, if you're going to be using yellow perch, they serve really two pretty good purposes. One is they're a decent sport fish and a good table fare fish. So if you want to eat a fish, yellow perch are a good choice. Now, another choice that you can use those fish for, yellow perch, are to reproduce for forage fish. You know, they're kind of long and tubular. Now, the pros to yellow perch is that they're multifunctional. You know, you can actually train them to come to fish food even in your pond. Now, you won't get a high percentage of them, but they're so prolific with their reproduction that you can get enough of them trained to eat fish food that you can feed them and make them grow larger. You know, so a 3/4 to a 1.25 pound yellow perch is pretty darn nice, pretty nice perch to eat. Now, when they spawn, they're one of the first fish to spawn in cool water or warm water ponds each spring. Now, there are other fish in cold water streams and ponds that will spawn before yellow perch, but they're the first ones if you've got them in your cool water or warm water ponds. They're going to spawn. They lay their eggs in this gelatinous, big word, gelatinous ribbon, and they like to stick it on plants like Christmas trees. So if you got yellow perch and you want them to spawn, collect a few Christmas trees after Christmas each winter and put them down in shallow water, and you'll see these kind of, I guess the best color is kind of an off-white, almost opaque gray strip of jelly with eggs embedded in it. You know, now the cons is they reproduce first, and they have a lot of babies, and there's a pretty good hatch rate. They're predator fish. So they're going to turn around and compete with your other fish. They're going to be spawning shortly after they do. Now, when you're thinking about all these other species of fish, the important things to think about is their life cycles, their lifestyles, and their life histories. So what do they eat? How do they reproduce? You know, how do they live within the community? When they get on the playground, do they play fair with all the other kids? You know, so as you think about all these different species of fish and you're trying to decide whether or not you want to incorporate some of those or add them to your fish population, it's real important that you learn about how those fish interact. Now, Clark Cole, you're watching. Something I learned when you and I were working together way back in the 80s is, I mean, you know, we didn't have the internet. We either had to learn by doing it or talking to somebody that did it or go find a book that could explain it to us. Well, it wasn't hard to learn about fathead minnows, channel catfish, bluegills, and largemouth bass. those are pretty easy. Those are the four mainstays for almost every pond and lake stocking in America. Those are the mainstays. Well, then there's other fish like red ear sunfish, crappie, black and white crappie. Somebody's asking about black and white crappie. I'll talk about that here in a minute. But then as I started analyzing some of these lakes, and Clark will remember the time that he and I went down to Laredo, Texas, to the Pinto Valle Ranch, and we analyzed like 15 ponds and two really good sized lakes. We got to slip over and eat cabrito in Nuevo Laredo at a Mexican food restaurant over there. It was really fun. But one of the things that I started picking up on down there at that ranch was they had these other fish. They had carp, they had buffalo, they had gizzard shad. They had these top minnows that I'd never seen before. I even saw a few darters down there, Rio Grande perch. So as I got thinking about it, I thought, you know what? It's not enough to learn about these fish that we want. I really need to learn about these fish that I don't know anything about, that we don't want. So just because somebody tells me we don't want green sunfish in a pond, it's part of my job and my curiosity to learn about green sunfish and then give people advice. If you understand how these different fish make a living, how they reproduce, what their life cycles are like and how they live, then you can decide whether you want them or not. I've actually seen people go and rote known a pond full of green sunfish because they made up their mind that they weren't any good. Where another choice could be, let's go get some advanced young largemouth bass that can eat them, stock some adult bluegills, because the bluegills are going to spawn in central Texas where that pond was. They're going to spawn 4 or 5 times a year. Green sunfish will spawn once. And just because strictly of attrition and reproduction, bluegill are going to outcompete, outgrow, outpopulate green sunfish over a fairly short period of time, like 18 months. So what we did with several other ponds that we came across that had green sunfish is I went in and stocked some 10 to 14 inch largemouth bass that I knew the genetics and I knew their ages. And we stocked those on top of the green sunfish with some adult bluegills, started feeding those bluegills, and it took almost a year for the green sunfish numbers to plummet, and those bass gained a lot of weight off of them. So we turned them from what we thought was a nuisance fish into buffet. So that worked out pretty good. So yellow perch, use those in don't look for them to thrive in hot water. They'll exist, they'll coexist, but they won't thrive. 6 to 8 inches is about the biggest one I've seen where water gets hot for extended periods of time. Which is like Florida strain bass. They don't like cold water. So don't take them to Iowa. Now, I do have other opinions about some bass with Florida genetics because I've seen them thrive under ice, almost by accident. So what are some of these other fish? Let's see. Somebody else was asking me. Let me scroll through here. Make sure I got this. I don't want to miss it. Let's see here. Bullheads. I wrote a story in Pond Boss recently about bullheads. It's really funny. I can remember a lot of ponds that I've seen. I can remember places I've been, people I've met. But I'll be damned if I can remember what I wrote and when I wrote it. But I wrote a story not long ago about bullheads. And people think that bullheads are, I think I wrote it in that last issue. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. I don't know. Y'all read it and tell me. But in the northern tier states, bullheads are looked at as a delicacy. And I've seen them on restaurant menus. I've ordered them and eaten them in the springtime. But the caveat is that those bullheads have gone through the winter. They've absorbed their fat. They've cleaned up. And then when they're captured in bulk and butchered in the springtime before they start to forage around on the bottom and eat, they're pretty tasty. But if you eat them late in the summer, especially in southern ponds, they don't have a good taste at all. And they're kind of grainy, and their texture is different. But what I am going to tell you is that bullheads, believe it or not, they're predators. I have actually shocked up in the shocker boat a number of bullheads The one that I remember the most was a couple of years ago. Shocked one up that had a 4 or 5 inch long gizzard shad down its gullet. It had eaten a gizzard shad. So they're not just feeding on the bottom and eating detritus and have their nose stuck in the mud, which they do. They're also predator fish. Now the thing about bullheads is their prolific reproduction. So if you don't have fish in there that can consume young bullheads, then they're going to have a tendency to overpopulate. And when they do, then their growth rate slows way, way down. And then they tend to muddy up small ponds. So I think it's wise to not have bullheads. Green sunfish, I told you a little story about that. Local minnows, for the most part, local minnows are not an issue. They're not a problem, depending on where you are. In the eastern seaboard, all the way down to Florida, and even some places in Texas, I'll come across ruds. And ruds look like golden shiners, but they'll be 10 or 12 inches long. They're not native species at all. They're minnows, and they reproduce prolifically, but they can outcompete a bunch of the native species. So native species of minnows, I don't have any heartburn with those at all. Exotic species, I usually do have heartburn. Look at there, Charlie Hill's checking in from Camden in Missouri. Tony Sutton wants to know about hybrid stripers. I'm going to talk a little bit about hybrid striped bass. I'll tell you a story. This happened in 1981. Before I really started getting involved in the pond management business, I got a call from a fishing club on the Cap Rock, which is, the Cap Rock divides the high plains, South Plains of Texas from going down into the Post Oak Savanna and then the Grand Prairie and all that. So there's probably 1,000-foot elevation difference there where the Cap Rock drops off, and it's real rugged country. Well, there was about a 35-acre club lake over there called Horner Lake back then. I think it dried up since then, but that lake was just overpopulated with crappie. And I teamed up with some guys from Texas Tech University because they were close. And we went out and analyzed that lake. And the guys from Texas Tech estimated there to be 170,000 white crappie, average 3.5 inches long, little thicker than a postage stamp, average age 7 years. That was a classic, beyond a classic case of stunted fish. So we talked to the club, and they had a huge budget, $1,000. They wanted to know what they could do to take that lake and turn it back into a bass fishing lake. And I told them, well, the first thing you do is make a cash call. Well, that wasn't going to happen. So we called Keogh Fisheries over in Arkansas, and they had just really just started cranking up their business. And we were able to buy 1,000 6-inch long hybrid striped bass, which were just barely enough that they could eat the dominant size of those white crappie. So we put those hybrid stripers in, and it took about 3 years, but they thinned out those numbers of crappie just dramatically over 3 years and disrupted their ability to reproduce, and they were culling fish. We went back in and checked that lake 3 years later. Largemouth bass had begun to grow again. Bluegills were growing again. And by that time, the club owners or the club members were starting to harvest some of those hybrid stripers. So we opened the season on hybrid stripers in, I think, year 4. And they were catching, 3 to 6 pound hybrid stripers. And they weren't being fed. There weren't good fish foods back then that you could just go down to the feed store and buy. And so the hybrid stripers served a pretty good role to help cull those fish. Now what hybrid stripers do now keep in mind, hybrid stripers don't like it really hot. If you're going to try to catch some and it's hot, you need to be able to get them in fast, get them unhooked, get them right back in the water. If you try to play them out and let them wear out, they will die. And so one of the things that we do with hybrid striped bass, if I'm out messing with them, especially if we're shocking up a lake, we be sure to revive them in oxygen-rich water. Now hybrid stripers are one of my favorite things about those things is they grow fast. They love open water. They'll live in a little bit different niche than the majority of your other fish are going to live in. They grow really fast. If you feed them a good high-protein feed like Aquamax Largemouth or Aquamax 600 or even MVP, they're going to grow exceptionally fast. 10 to 12 pounds is probably tops. 12 pounds is about the biggest one I've ever held in my hands. I've seen pictures of some where they claim that they're, 15 pounds. That could be. So hybrid striped bass can be a good choice as a third or fourth species of predator fish or game fish in a pond, as long as you got the right habitat. Now remember, I always preach habitat. As goes the habitat, so goes what lives in it. Hybrid stripers, they'll eat fish food. They love to eat gizzard shad. They love to eat threadfin shad, and they love open water. Now they're not going to reproduce, so they're put and take. What you put in is what you get out, except you'll never get out as many as you put in. That's the way nature works. There's always attrition. Budget for attrition. How much attrition? I don't know. Let's see here. Let me go down here and see what else. Smallmouth bass. All right, let's see here. Bear with me a minute. I'm going down here. Dick Tabbert calling out his hybrid striper is too big for a 5-gallon bag. Yeah, you know what? That's what happens. Now, one of the things about hybrid stripers, it's not their nature to outgrow their environment. However, they can get too crowded, and if they do that, then they get a little bit long and lanky, and their weight gains level off. Then they start to decline a little bit, even though you're feeding them. So keep that in mind as you're thinking about it. White crappie, black crappie. Jay Spire says, long time bud. Yeah, family, we're doing pretty good with what we got to work with. White crappie, black crappie, or yellow perch for a 7/10 acre pond. Your thoughts on what's best, how many in stock? Okay, Mike, you're going to love my answer. None of those. When people tell me they want white crappie or black crappie or yellow perch, what they're typically telling me is they want a fish that's good to eat. Now, the problem with crappie, now I'm going to tell you the difference between white crappie and black crappie. White crappie don't get quite as big as black crappie. White crappie reproduce more than black crappie. Now, I have seen black crappie. I've seen some pretty huge black crappie, but I've also seen some really big white crappie. But the problem is their top end predator fish limited by their mouth size. What that means to us in the pond business is that they're going to feed mostly on small bait fish. And I've watched crappie decimate small bait fish populations. Now, you know what? If we could predict that, it would be one thing, but you can't. Because nobody can predict how well crappie are going to spawn each year. Other than yellow perch, they're the first ones to spawn in warm water ponds. So if you don't have yellow perch and you've got crappie, they're going to spawn first. So when their babies are coming off the beds, they're going to be feeding on plankton and insects and small fish that they can get as they grow. And the timing is such when crappie spawn that the babies coming off those nests are going to want to chow down on your baby bluegills and your baby bass. And just like Horner Lake, it probably took that lake 5 or 6 years to get to the point where it got, And so if they'd interfered with it early, a few years earlier, then they wouldn't have had such a big pickle to unpickle and fix, So I don't recommend crappie at all in water less than 20 acres. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can't grow some big crappie. The first stocked crappie you stock can grow to be pretty big. The problems come in 5 years down the road, 6 years down the road, 7 years down the road. A 7/10 acre pond, the good news about that is when the crappie stunt, it's easy to fix. It's easy to start that pond over and do something different. Or do that again. So if you're insistent about stocking crappie in a small body of water, be sure to load it up with fathead minnows first. Get some largemouth bass in there that can eat baby crappie, and then stock your crappie, and then wish them luck. And get ready to cull. And who's going to cull a 4-inch crappie? Raise your hand. Oh, no hands are going up. That's what I thought. How many would you stock in the spring? Since I don't recommend that, then I'm not going to recommend that you stock more than 100. What was that? Was that double talk? See, what did he just say? You know what? I'll tell you this. I've been around the block. And I am absolutely not opposed to people trying things that are different. So if you want to try that, do it. But be sure you've got abundant fathead minnows and bluegill and some up-and-coming bass when you stock those crappie. 100 crappie, and stock black crappie. If that's what if you're insistent on doing that, stock black crappie, stocking about 3 to 4 inches long. Do that about at least 8 months after you've stocked the fathead minnows, bluegill, and largemouth bass. So if you do the fathead minnows and the bluegill in March of this coming year, 2021, then stock your bass at the end of May, 1st of June. Stock the crappie in November, or late October, November, if you're going to do that. All right, let's see here. There's Harrison Davis checking in. Dustin Crawley saying howdy. Billy Bates. Hey, Bob, just added some shell crackers to my pond in Maryland. Hopefully some will survive and spawn. You know what, Billy Bates in Maryland, you know, when you guys that are along the eastern seaboard, oftentimes your water temperatures are mitigated by the Atlantic Ocean. So if you're close enough that your weather patterns don't get so brutally cold, raiders stand a pretty good chance. Now, shell crackers are called shell crackers because of what they eat. They love to eat snails. They love to eat crustaceans, crunchy insects. They got these two bony pads in their throat, right back the back of their throat, where they can crush those snails and little bitty mussels. And actually, for those of you that are shell cracker fans and you follow those critters, you know some of the biggest ones in the nation are coming out of Arizona, where the quagga mussels have taken over. Young quagga mussels are a huge source of food for shell crackers out there in Havasu and places like that. I'm going to take 1 minute and say thanks to Purina Mills for sponsoring this show. I met the guys at Purina in 1995, 25 years ago. And I've been blessed that they believed in me enough to work with me and let me work with them on developing lines of fish food. And not only do I have I helped them design those fish foods, I've helped them test them. I've helped them see how they work. They've gotten to see the results. And I'm a believer. I can tell you the first 20-something years of me doing this compared to the last 20-something years of me doing this, I have seen significant differences in fish growth rates and maximum fish sizes because the feeds have gotten better. So Purina Mills, my hat's off to you guys. I appreciate what you do and how you do it. Texas Hunter, Chris Blood, Bob Brock, all the guys down there at Texas Hunter, who's now owned by Pradco. I appreciate those guys because they've come up with some of the best fish feeders on the market. Customer service, best out there. If I order a fish feeder, it's shipped that day if I get in touch with them before 2 o'clock. You know, and if anybody has an issue with it, they're bam, on it, and they get it fixed. You know, if a timer gets submerged or a motor wears out or whatever, they're on it. Let's see here. There's the commercials for the day. Oh, by the way, Palm Boss Magazine. Holy cow, let me do a little commercial here. There it is, reading backwards because the Palm Boss forgot to switch the screen around. Oops. $35 a year, y'all. $35 a year. You guys that watch this so regularly know what's coming. Cheaper than a Friday night date. And last a year. A Friday night date, you know, by the time you get that ticket at the restaurant, even if you had a glass of wine, you know, you're way over $40. And the next day, that's gone and forgotten about. This lasts for a year. So, $35 if you want to subscribe to Palm Boss, call the office, or you can go online to palmboss.com. While I'm thinking about it, you've got other resources besides listening to this talking ahead in a pretty little cabin tell you about fish. You can go to palmboss.com, click on the discussion forum, Ask the Boss. All of our videos like this are archived on the Palm Boss website page. So there's a lot of free articles, free videos, and the discussion forum, live discussion forum, where you can post a question and in short order get some good solid answers. So let's see here. Doug Brown says, 1 acre pond, 4 feet deep. How would bass do in a pond this depth? It would be, the bass would do okay in water 4 feet deep. I mean, that's how deep hatchery ponds are. The problem with 4 foot water is it has a tendency to fluctuate too much with its water temperature through the course of a summer. You know, so in 4 feet of water, plus if that long and this deep, not to tickle the crotch hairs of a great blue heron that can eat your bass, they'll do fine. But it's just, it's a little shallow, but it's not too shallow. So to answer your question, a 1 acre pond, 4 feet deep, bass would do fine in a pond like that, with the exceptions of fluctuating temperature, and they're more available to predators. So I'd want to be sure that I had the right kind of habitat to minimize the risk of predators. You know, it's some escape cover, some escape habitat. Better yet, I got a better idea. Raise the level of the pond 2 feet and you're good to go. Let's see here. Dustin Crawley, hope all is well. Just went under contract on 83 acres. Closing in the middle of next month. Got several pond and lake sites on the property. Best spot will make a 5 to 6 acre spring-fed lake with 20 to 30 foot depth. Let's see. Can't wait to get some things going next year. You know what? You ring when you're ready, and I'll help you design those lakes and at least tell you some of the some of the pitfalls and pratfalls. Let's see, holy cow, I'm going down here. Here's Chris Blood. Give our best to Debbie. Hope I'll recover. Thank you very much. Yeah, you know what? Taylor, that has the virus, he had some mild flu-like symptoms, and then he quarantined. They've kind of got a man cave over there where they enclosed a detached garage, and that's where he's hanging out. But he's been off work now, I guess, for over a week. But he's got a honey-do list about a mile long, and he goes out and walks every day by himself. He's not holed up watching TV. He's actually being pretty constructive. So thanks for the kind words there, Chris. Jeff Thompson purchased Texas Hunter feeder, feeding MVP. Just finished hatchery pond, adding Florida genetics this winter, managing pond weeds. Holy cow, dude, you need to come do this show. You got it going on. Tate Smith watching from Mexico in quarantine. Good gosh, wow. Wow. Matt Rails unloading some yellow perch as he's listening to the Pond Boss tonight. Matt's up there in outside of Rushville, Indiana, stocking some fish before winter sets in on those guys. Joby just added aeration to a 4-acre lake. Deepest spot's 35 feet. What changes should I notice, and what does that do for my fish? Well, Joby, I don't remember where your place is, but I'll tell you this, a 4-acre lake, when you aerate it, what's going to happen is you'll start seeing, let's see, your lake is already turned over for the year. So even though it's turned over, when you kick on that aeration system, I would still follow the recommendations from the manufacturer. I would not just turn it on and leave it on, because it's going to be puking up stuff off the bottom of that lake. So check your water temperature. If your water temperature is below 60, I don't think I'd run it. I'd leave it off. Now, if you're prone to ice over and you want to keep the pond open, then we'll have another conversation. I'm going to presume that you're south of the Mason-Dixon line, that you're not going to be dealing with ice cover. Then what I'm going to tell you is depending on where you are, if you're in South Florida or Central or South Texas, parts of Louisiana down along the coast, then I'm going to tell you to follow the manufacturer's recommendations and start it up slowly. Don't start it up fast. If you do that, it's going to be regurgitating all kinds of junk off the bottom, which can influence your water chemistry going into the winter. So be cautious about that. Let's see here. There's Dion Myers. Joby says, by the way, added a total of 5 aerators, or what you might call bubblers. Okay. Also thoughts on white bass in the same. Joby, remind me where you are, because I don't remember. Let's see here. Also thoughts on white bass in the same lake. If I've seen white bass in private lakes on just a handful of occasions. And where they seem to thrive is where the timing is perfect, that they can go upstream, up a creek or a small river, and be able to reproduce to perpetuate themselves. Anytime I find white bass in small waters, it's typically because that lake communicated with a nearby stream or river, which means that it flooded and those fish swam in there. And that being the case, I think they're kind of cool. I like white bass. I've seen one time in my career where they successfully reproduced, and I've heard about it in 2 others, other than, that's in private waters, fairly small private waters. Small to me meaning 20 acres or bigger. It's where I've seen them spawn. So if you've got white bass in there, I don't want to figure out how they got there. Either somebody caught them in a nearby lake and stocked them, bucket biology, which I'm opposed to, or they swam in from flooding. And if that's the case, I'd want to know about it. Travis Paul Smith got his Pond Boss. Cool. Mike McPherson, years ago, my ex-wife and I, I always like it when the story starts off. Years ago, my ex-wife and I went on a date. 9 months later, we had a boy. Moral of the story is to skip the date and buy the magazine. Hey, Pond Boss, $35 a year. Cheaper than that date. Maybe not quite as much fun, but still pretty. Now that's funny right there. Mike, you made my day, buddy. That's hilarious. Jonathan Stoddard, what type of water chemistry should I look for in well water that feeds into a pond? 1-acre pond in Quitman, Texas. I'll tell you what you're going to find in Quitman, Texas. You're going to find water that's influenced by tannic acid from pine needles typically. So you want to look at the pH. Now the pH doesn't mean anything other than it's a measurement, like inches, quarts, centimeters, gallons. But what the pH is going to tell you is a measurement of how acid the water is or how basic the water is. The main things you want to be looking for in water chemistry is alkalinity. You want to see the hardness. And then if the alkalinity is something under 40 parts per million, you want to see some of the other micro minerals and metals, like how much calcium you've got, what's the carbonates like, what kind of iron, magnesium, things like that, what kind of salts are there. So I would do it that way. There's Mark Primo checking in from South Central Louisiana. Visited with a friend today at his property where he's currently digging a pond. His pond is 14 feet deep at the deepest, where he has about a foot of groundwater. Does the deepest part need to be sealed? Don't understand if this will cause the pond to leak or if it will add water to the pond. Explain whether groundwater is good or bad and how it affects the pond. Well, when you get to groundwater and actually you find the water table, that level of the pond is going to tend to move with that water table. So if the water's coming in the bottom of that pond, my goal would be to seal it out, because the way it comes in is also the way it goes out. So just imagine this: you got a pond 14 feet deep and you got 2 feet of water in the bottom of it. Then you add another 12 feet of water on top of that. That's a lot of weight pushing down. So odds are high that when that water pushes down, that weight of that water pushes down, it's going to force that water to go migrate further along into the water table, and somebody else is going to get it. So when you tap into the water table, everybody that I talk to in the time that I've been involved in it, we want to seal it off and keep it from coming in. Joby is in Ohio. All right, so Joby in Ohio, I'm going to tell you to check your water temperature. If your water temperature is below 60, which I bet it is, then aerating it right now doesn't achieve much of a purpose. Now, here's the caveat to that. If you want to circulate your water to keep it from freezing, you can do that, but I would move a couple of my diffusers into water less than about 8 feet deep. That way, and then turn the others off. Because what you'll do there is, as you move the water, you want it moving close to the shore so you don't have weak spots in your ice in another month. But right now, if you want to use it to cleanse your water, don't worry about it. Just winterize it, start it up as soon as the ice is off. Or if you want to speed up de-icing next spring, then kick it on about 2 weeks before ice off typically occurs. And then you can start speeding up that process a little bit. But moving that water now with cold air around you is not going to help cleanse the water nearly like it will next spring and summer and early fall for you. So that's going to be my comment there. Matt Rail, you're an aeration expert. You see, he's in Cincinnati. So, hello, Pond Boss. Are jet skis hard on pond banks? Yeah, when you run into the pond bank, it's hard on everybody. But here's how jet skis can hurt a pond bank, is the wake. So if you don't have good vegetation or riprap and you're running around in jet skis and creating big wakes, then that can cause erosion. But otherwise, that's not going to be, they're not that big a problem. I see people using them all the time. Just be sure and wear a life jacket. I love, Ray Scott told me one time, he was promoting some of these, I can't remember the name of them, but you put them on and they got a little CO2 cartridge on. When you hit the water, a little alcohol thing dissolves and it blows up, by itself. And Ray was shooting a commercial for that company at his place. He says, Pond Boss, he says, you know why people don't wear life jackets? And I said, well, Ray, tell me why. He said, because they've never drowned. If they ever drown, they'll start wearing a life jacket. So when you're on a jet ski, put on a PFD. Let's see, are they hard on pond banks? The wave action can be. The wake can be, so yes. But so can cattle. All right, let's see here. Yeah, that was a pretty funny joke McPherson told. I love that. Michael Ehrig checking in. Got to communicate with him earlier today. Remember last winter when I messaged you early in the winter on ice on Iowa Pond, and I saw half a dozen red ear frozen in the ice around the pond, but not one other than the 5 species. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Okay, so what's going on there with what he's talking about there is red ear sunfish don't like cold. And even more offensive to them is how fast it gets cold. So when the water temperature drops, plummets, gets cold quick, I've actually stood and watched red air die in concrete tanks when we have a cold front blow through. If I didn't kick the well on and put some, spit some really nice warm well water in there, they would lay on the bottom and just die. Their metabolism rate slows down. The fat in their cells begins to congeal a little bit, and they just can't move. They're immobile. So they don't really like cold weather. However, under ice, where Michael is in Iowa, they could do fine if when it ices up, if you've got 40, 41, 42 degree water down at the bottom, they can survive that as long as it doesn't get cold quick. Now, in the pond in Ohio, if you're going to aerate that pond in the wintertime, you can pretty well bet that your water temperature is going to plummet. So one of the downsides to aerating that pond is that when you're kicking that water up to communicate with the atmosphere, it's going to get cold. At 32, it's going to freeze. But with you, and the reason I tell you to move your diffusers to 8 feet deep, because if you do that, then you can protect your thermal refuge out in that deeper 30-foot water out that way. So you'll have that 40-degree temperature water out there that can protect those fish like red ear sunfish. Jay Rice, Southwest Missouri, building a pond. How deep should I go? It depends on the site. I tell you, to give you a straight up answer, because the thing about this pond management business, pond building, fish management, is everything depends. It all depends. It depends on your circumstance. Depends on your pond site. Depends on your kind of dirt. Depends on if you lay in a valley, or like if you're in Tennessee, if you lay in a holler. So it kind of depends on where you are. But here's your answer. I would shoot for 12 to 15 feet deep in Southwest Missouri. I would shoot for that depth. And matter of fact, I would shoot for that depth in most places. I don't think you need water deeper than 22 to 25 feet anywhere. But that's another story, because I told you I was going to talk about fish tonight. Jonathan Stoddard says, while fishing for bluegill this past week, we noticed some white bumps on several fish. I posted some pics on a pond management Facebook page, and several people suggested they were from scarring from fins during aggressive feeding. Does this happen often? See more? Or should I be looking for something more? White bumps can be a couple of things this time of year. They can be yellow grubs or white grubs escaping the fish, which those are parasites that can embed right under the skin. They can also be what's called red sore disease, which is what happens after those grubs escape the fish. Now, if your fish are still feeding, which it looks like maybe you are, you could sure medicate the feed. You can go to the feed store, buy a liquid antibiotic, mix it with a surfactant, which in this case, I'd mix it with K-Rose syrup, and then drizzle that on your fish food. So take about 4 ounces of that antibiotic with a small bottle of K-Rose syrup, mix it on half a bag of fish food, mix it in really good, let it soak in, feed that fish food, and if it's a bacterial infection, that will take it out. Which I said that on film. I've done it before, and people tell me I'll get in trouble. So y'all bail me out. We just repaired a busted dam after 2 years of nothing but a spring-fed creek going through the middle of it. Pond is around 25 acres and basically a new pond now that is spring-fed. How soon can we restock, and what should the process be to be successful for long term? I'll tell you what, Michael, call me. Call me at the Pond Boss office. I'll tell you what, better yet, email me, boblusk@outlook.com. And I'm going to give the short answer here. The short answer is I need to know your goals. If we know what the mission is and we know a timeline and a budget, then we come up with a stocking plan. And I'll be happy to refer you to people. That's part of what Pond Boss does, is we've got a big network of vendors out there, and supporters, fish hatcheries to aeration companies. And I'll be happy to counsel with you one-on-one to help you decide what you want to do and then help you find the right source to get what it is you're looking for. So long-term, to me, long-term to somebody 65 is going to be different than long-term to somebody 35. So we need to have a conversation, because there are a lot of different ways to stock a lake in today's world. Let's see. Travis says, I have a lot of leaves falling in my small pond. Will some leaves hurt the pH, and how would I correct it? The pond weeds. Well, here's the thing about that is is the alkalinity is going to determine whether the pH changes or not. Because look at alkalinity as your Alka-Seltzer or your Prilosec, your antacid. So when leaves come into a pond and they begin to break down, they're going to give off tannins, which creates tannic acid, which is going to cause the pH to go down. However, if your alkalinity is high enough, it's going to absorb that acid and the pH won't change at all. So, Travis, if your pH is 7 and your alkalinity is 150, you won't see a pH change. Ty Rob says, what are your recommendations to getting yellow perch to reproduce in a 6-acre pond, 25-foot depth, red clay bottom, spring-fed coontail? Don't kill the coontail. They will spawn all over that coontail next spring. They like to stick their eggs on vegetation. Coontail qualifies for that, as long as they're big enough. Ron Ewing, is this guy related to me? I don't guess I know which guy you're talking about. Are you talking about J.R. Ewing from the movie or the series Dallas? He probably is. So here we go. All right, let's go back and talk about some of these other fish that I didn't talk about like I said I was going to. I learned about carp. Carp, we don't want carp at all. Now, I'm talking about common carp, Israeli carp, mirror carp, any of the common carp varieties. We don't want those. They reproduce prolifically. They take up space. They disrupt reproduction. They'll root around in spawning beds. They'll make lakes and ponds get muddy. So learn about these different gizzard shad. I use gizzard shad in specific circumstances. Otherwise, I don't want them. They can reproduce too prolifically, grow too big, too fast, and then disrupt the whole food chain. Give off a pheromone, quit reproducing. We don't want that. Red ear sunfish, yeah, we want those. Those are a good insurance policy, really nice game fish, and they add to the fishery. Other fish are irrelevant, like most species of sunfish, pretty much irrelevant. Warmouth, irrelevant. If you get a few warmouth, chances are they're not going to establish and outcompete your other fish. Green sunfish, pretty much the same way. Green sunfish only dominate if they get a head start. They're going to be a bully in brand new waters where they get a jump start. If they're in there with bass and bluegill already, they're going to have to fight to compete, and they just can't keep up. Numbers just aren't there to keep up. White and black crappie, told you the differences between those two. I avoid those unless it's in larger water with the right kind of habitat. What are some of the other species? Let's see, long-ear sunfish. They're fun, but they're irrelevant. Red-breast sunfish. They love moving water, and they will make a nest 24 inches in diameter, beautiful colors. They're irrelevant in a pond. Irrelevant to me means they're not going to have a negative impact or an impact at all on a well-stocked, well-managed fishery. What about smallmouth bass? I love smallmouth bass, and if you've got smallmouth bass habitat, they can thrive. The problem with smallmouth bass is their mouth is just small enough and their behavior is just passive enough that they can't outcompete largemouth bass. So if you're going to have both, you better have a dominant amount of smallmouth bass habitat, because even then, the largemouth bass are going to want to dominate that habitat. However, smallmouth, especially if you stock them every couple of years, stock them big enough that they can get in there and not get eaten immediately. So a lot of these fish are going to thrive based on their habitat. I love smallmouth bass. We just got through putting 250 walleye into a 70-acre lake up and outside of Kansas City, because he's got perfect walleye habitat, and that's his mission. Is every other year he's going to add 250 to 300 more walleye to go in there with his smallmouth bass and his largemouth bass and his bluegill and his red ear sunfish. And all those fish are working pretty much in harmony. That lake's in its 3rd year. Let's see here. Harrison Davis, Mike McPherson. Are there any good websites, books, or info available on fish health and disease that you would recommend? Could be some good reading for the winter. There is one book in particular. Let me think of the name of it. It's American Fisheries Society sells it. It's $80. It's let me think about it. I can't think of the name of it, but it is a textbook on pond management that hits every topic, from pond construction to fisheries management to water chemistry on down the line. And there's fish diseases in there as well. So fish health. There was another book that I don't know if you can find this. I haven't looked for it in a long time, called The Third Report to the Fish Farmers. And it was produced from the Fisheries Extension Service many, many, many years ago. That book is a wealth of knowledge if you can find it. Now, of course, the Pond Boss discussion forum is pretty good as well. I'd spend some time on that. What about pike? You know, one thing I didn't talk about were pike. In the pike family, that's everything from chain pickerel to redfin pickerel to muskies, northern pike. But I'll tell you this, I really, really, really like tiger muskies. Tiger muskies can serve a really cool role. You know, one of the big problems in bass pond management is harvest. You just really can't take enough bass out of most ponds to keep that fishery rolling like it should. You know, if you're trying to take out 25 or 30 bass per acre in a 20-acre lake, that takes the joy out of it, turns it into work. You know, 500 bass a year, that's catching 2 a day almost. You know, so that turns into work. But a fish like tiger muskies that don't reproduce, they're a true hybrid. They're a cross between northern pike and muskellunge. They're really efficient predators, and they can help you cull bass. Plus, it's pretty dadgum fun to tie into a 35-inch tiger muskie. Now, they're apex predators. They're truly ambush predators. They love to live in vegetation. Now, they're not easy to get, and they're pretty expensive, like $15 an inch. I said that right. $15 an inch, something like that. You know, so, I think some 10-inchers were like 60 or 70 bucks. So maybe it's more like, I don't remember the price, but I know they cost a lot of money. But you don't need many. You know, 3 per acre in a crowded bass lake's about the right number, and do that about every 3 or 4 years, and you'll get there. So here we go. Let's see here. Travis Smith, great show. Thanks for all the great info. I'll pray for you and your family. Hey, thanks a lot for that. Now, next Wednesday night, I don't think I'll be broadcasting because odds are high that I'm going to defy the government and be with my family, mask or not, celebrating Thanksgiving and enjoying ourselves. I think life's a little too short. I've about had all the government intervention I want. You know, I'm not going to sit here and start preaching about this stuff. You guys are all grown up. You can make up your own minds. This mine is I'm going to be celebrating Thanksgiving with family. So I'm going to skip next Wednesday and the following Wednesday if I don't die from the coronavirus that I don't have it. No symptoms, nothing. Then I will see you 2 weeks from today. And it probably will be, I like this cabin a lot. I might just hang out here for a few more days while we quarantine. But I will see you guys again 2 weeks from today, probably from the office. And we'll just see how that goes. You know, I really do appreciate you guys watching the show. It just fascinates me that you're willing to sit here for an hour. You know, here we got 40-something people on right now, and y'all are willing to sit here and listen to an old gray-bearded guy talk about ponds and fish. So I'm going to bid you farewell. Happy Thanksgiving coming up. Spend time with your loved ones. And thanks for your prayers and your thoughts. And thanks for hanging out. So until 2 weeks from today, adios.